Well, Jim, it's great to speak to you. I know our good mutual friend Carl Andreasen kind of put us together, but I have been following your work for some time, so I'm excited to jump into this. But first things first, how's things?
Good. Things are going really well. I think the UFO and the experiencer community is fired up, and there's a lot of interest in this area, which I'm sure this is why, we're talking, and I've been talking to a lot of people about this subject over the past few months.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I've noted is the experience conversation seems to have been ramping up alongside, or we had this kind of government focus when it comes to the UAP subjects a lot in the last few years. So I've been really encouraged to see the experience of voice being made louder, and so that's I don't know if you've seen the same.
Oh yeah, I see the conspiracy type of things dropping off significantly, spinning over to the person, the people that are actually seeing things happen. People don't really, a lot of people don't understand what that means, experiencer. It's like what we did is we jumbled up all the things, all the strange phenomena that happens to people, and we call those people that experience, so they're experiencers. I mean, it could be orbs, UFOs, it could be apparitions, it could be a future, looking into the future or hearing somebody. So it's a big bucket that a lot of stuff gets thrown into, but it happened to me is really weird. And this is not normal. So therefore I want to think about this.
Well, I'd love to get into any personal experiences you've had at some point, but I'd like to start by sort of, well, here's the question. Let me sort of add that in. Was your experience what led you into looking into this phenomena in a more scientific way?
Well, I myself have never really had an experience that I feel that I've had. What I'm talking about in general, people that say they've had experiences of people. So talking about themselves and say, look, I've seen a UFO and I've experienced this thing and I've had medical injuries. I've had, physiological injuries to my body that I don't understand and I want to figure it out.
Now, I mean, let's jump into your background a bit because you have worked with some very prominent figures, Dr. Hal Puthoff, Kit Green. Tell us about those collaborations, what sort of work you were doing.
Sure. So when, I spent 25 years as an engineer, and I was fairly successful, did a lot of great things. But then I said to my wife, I says, I don't really feel fulfilled. I don't really feel that I've really done anything significant. I've made people money, but I really haven't done anything so I said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to get a science degree. And I went back to school and I started out as a PhD in engineering. And then the physics department said, "Oh, Jim, you're pretty good at this stuff. Why don't you come over to the physics side?" So I went over. I got a PhD in physics, and then I got interested in a lot of the cancer research that was going on. I'm next to Brown University, so Brown University had a great postdoc program that I got into. So I did a lot of cancer research there. Looked at how the body and certain aspects of your body uptake energies from the outside. And Hal Puthoff actually at the time was investigating a lot of strange phenomena based upon people getting injured, people getting hit with radiation or sonic waves or electromagnetic waves. And he needed somebody to analyze that data. So that's how Hal and I hooked up. I was in 2000, I believe 2011. I went to Austin, where his institute is, the Institute for Advanced Studies at Austin, and I actually ended up spending almost 10 years working with him and with the various, with all sorts of crazy people that you would, this amazing amount of people that I worked with, like Dr. Kit Green, who was a great medical doctor, Jacques Vallée, who was one of the consultants that worked with us, Gary Nolan, worked really closely with Gary Nolan on a lot of things, and he was an amazing guy to work with. So all those guys, they basically came out of the woodwork because they wanted to work with Hal because Hal had all the cool things and he had tons of money that he was sponsored with.
Was the UFO subject a regular topic that you guys spoke about, or was it more just just focusing on the work at the time?
Well, the reason I got involved because there was a lot of things that were happening to people that left some kind of medical mark on them. They would actually have an experience. They would see a UFO, and then the next day they would develop a lesion, or they would basically, get some disease and end up in the hospital. So Hal had a stack of these things, about 50 of these cases that Kit was fooling around with it. He said, Jim, why don't you go work with Kit Green and figure these things out? So that's how I got started in the whole thing, is really looking at these, going back, interviewing the actual patients, because he's a medical doctor, so he had all the ability to do that. So, give him extra MRIs, look at some of the stuff, even some of the stuff coming from Cuba, the Havana syndrome cases we looked at, and we found correlations of what was happening to them to what was happening in the general cases out in the public of people having experiences and ending up, pretty bad sickness. But most of this stuff was like the fringy stuff where, you can't, everybody that has an experience doesn't get sick, obviously. There's always going to be the edge cases where you have people that they get rare blood diseases, but then some people just have an experience and they just go on their merry way. So there's going to be both sides of the fence. But I was looking at the stuff that was really severe, really left the people incapacitated.
Were these medical effects that people were getting from interactions with beings or being in close proximity to UAP? What was the kind of the variables there?
So it was so we actually kept really, really good notes on this. So most of the cases where people saw something in their environment, either they said a portal opened up, or a orb flew by, or a UFO was spotted, or they, believe it or not, they would be sitting there, they would go into a catatonic state, wake up hours later and not really realize that they've been in that state. And like a family member would say, where you been for the past 4 hours? I mean, we didn't know where you were. They said, what do you mean? It's only been like a half an hour, but it actually, these huge times would go by, but they went deep into this state. And then we recorded all these things, categorized it, and ended up seeing a lot of correlation where they would have these experiences, do this, and then later on, maybe a day later, they would start developing these very, very acute type of indications on their body that something happened to them.
Did you come to any conclusions at all, or was it more just like this definitely needs to be sort of studied more?
Oh no! So the object of the investigation, well, Hal put Kit and I together. He shoved us out there and said, "Look, go figure out what the heck's going on. Why are these people getting hurt?" So we came to the conclusion that most of the people that were getting hurt saw these things in their environment. So we said that there's something must be emanating, some kind of energy must be emanating from these people, or from this, whatever this object is, entering the people to make them have this whatever diseases they would have and have these experiences. So that's when we drew that conclusion. We, from the 50 cases, we had a definitive, in science, you don't really have anything definitive. You have a statistically significant indication that there was some kind of external energy that caused them to have these injuries. During COVID, people say, well, what's the vector? How did COVID get into me? We didn't really have a vector. So we didn't really know what the origins were, but it seemed that the origin happened outside their body, not within their body. So we concluded that. So that took about 2 years. It did take a while because there was a lot of stuff to do. But then what happened is that, Hal came back to us and said, what's your next steps? And our next steps would say, if there was some kind of energetic something around their environment that was actually causing this to happen, can we, at the same time they're having experiences, record that on a piece of equipment that was local to their bodies? So he gave us some more funding to build some, personal devices that people would carry around or have in their environment that would just sit there all day and record all sorts of things. So the infrasound, the electromagnetic, the gamma, the temperature, the barometric pressure. I mean, anything we could possibly think of, we measured. And then while they were having the experiences and actually logging this and telling us about this, we would be looking at their environment, and we saw some amazing correlations between the data. So the first hypothesis was that so the energetic stuff is coming from the outside. So we had significant amount of data to show that actually happened.
That's amazing. Everyone likes to hear data and see data to be examined.
Right. Yeah. And I do have some examples of that. That we got permission from. A lot of this stuff you have to realize is very, very personal. These people, when they report it, it's super, personal. They start telling their innermost feelings. So On some of the cases, we did get permission to show it publicly, but obviously obfuscated, so it doesn't have any personal information. So, if you want, I can actually show you some of the anomalous events that occurred.
Please share your screen. Yeah.
So, just to give you a quick overview of some, oh wow, there's a lot of them. So, yeah, there's a lot of them. So basically, if you look at this particular one right here, like, so on a normal day, so this is the microwave radiation data being recorded for this individual, and normally it's just this jigga jagged thing where people are on their cell phones, the microwave's going, maybe the police scanner from across the street's going, little tiny bumps. All of a sudden, there's this significant bump, and at that time, of course, the people don't see this data
Sure.
till the till weeks later. They reported something happening to them. They said, at this point, I can't read it. It's kind of too small print, but um, all these are significant that enter into our database, and we found that there was a significant a narrative that they reported, and at the same time, there was this incredible spike in the microwave data. This is a fairly typical data collection that we made, where we would get something within some time frame where people report something, within some Gaussian uh, value, we would actually see some type of a big spike. So this is one of the things. So in each one of these that are circled in red here, we got a indication from the person, some narrative, and at the same time we saw the spike. The ones that don't have the narrative, we're not allowed to actually show, but they said we can show the data. So all of these, like this particular one, this spike happened, and then somebody reported something. I off the top of my head, I don't know what it was, but they reported something happening to them. And all of these spikes happened. Like this one was like on a day-to-day basis. They say like every day at like 5 o'clock, they would get this experience. And sure enough, we would go back and look at this stuff and find out that there's a blip. So this is like one, two, three, like every fourth or fifth day, they would have these experiences. There's another example. So I've got, hundreds of these examples, and it's like, it gets to the point where you keep looking at this stuff and say, look, this can't be just some arbitrary thing that it happens to be, the equipment happened to spike at the same time somebody has an experience. They see an orb, or they have an out of body experience, or they see an aberration. So this is so Hal paid us to conduct a study for about 3 years, where we had 35 people, and we gave them all equipment, and we had them every single day, or not every day, like many times as they want per day. They would give us our narratives of what they were experiencing. And so we recorded that over 3 years, over 35 people. We got hundreds and hundreds of these kind of incidents where we have some really crazy thing happen to the data. At the same time, something was reported to them. Like in this one, they would see an odd audible noise. So at this point, they had an odd audible noise that they heard, and and I think this is the gyroscope. So I mean, it's like, so the gyroscope kicked off, and at the same time, they heard something in their ears. So something was going on in the environment.
Wow.
Another one, they had all these things. So anyway, we have tons of this data that we had, and then on top of that, if I can continue, if you
Sure.
wouldn't mind. So there is a report that was filed that anybody listening to this podcast can actually go and look at this thing. I'll give you the link for it. It's a report that we published, which basically summarized all of the data that was gathered during this thing. It showed the equipment that we used, how we did it, all the things, and then gave some examples of some of these examples are in here. And then there was a couple at the very end of this. Oh, wrong one. At the very end of this thing, we gave some summaries of some pretty big examples of things that happened. And then at the same time, we were looking at different. So not only the people that we were looking at, we were also looking at actual things out in the. So we found properties that people would come to us and say, look, there's something crazy going in our property. Can you help us instrument? Because we're seeing things on a camera. We're seeing actually anomalous things on a camera. So this was a situation where we recorded they recorded an orb on one of their cameras, and at the same time, we started reading at the exact same time. We recorded these incredibly anomalous signals coming from the electromagnetic, the gamma. It looks like this is the gyroscope and the magnetic vector. So again, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to match up the environmental signals with what's happening being reported by individuals.
Sure. Yeah, that's incredible. Were there ever any occasions where something was picked up on multiple sensors, but you were able to rule it out as prosaic, that it had a simple explanation? So in theory, you're able to see something prosaic against something anomalous.
Yeah, I'd say that it was probably what I just showed you is probably 0.1% of the total number that we got. But we had some very strict rules that it has to happen. Like you said, it's actually exactly what you said. It has to happen on multiple channels. It has to happen within a certain time frame of the narrative that people actually reported, and it has to, be within it has to be within a certain magnitude. It couldn't just be a little tiny blip. It has to be something that is. So we record like the normal, what we call the background noise, and then we have a standard deviation above that. It has to break that barrier even to be considered. So out of that, we got, I think, let me go back to this. I think we got a total of 300 out of the many thousands, I mean, thousands and thousands that we recorded. We got 300 that we considered viable data points, which is pretty significant.
That is. That's
And it took 3 years. It took 3 years and 35 people, but
Yeah, how does sort of MUPAS differentiate from other kind of UAP or experiencer data collection points, let's say, or different groups?
so that's a really good question. And part of the reason is, in fact, we started off on that whole thing when Hal first said to us, let's go find out what's going on and kind of figured out. So what do? We looked up, right? We put cameras up, we looked for infrared. We were always looking up, thinking that all this stuff's coming out there. What we then realized is that, wait a minute, it's all right. UAPs might be in the environment. UAPs might be what's causing this, but it's the people that are actually being affected in reporting this. Because you can have the best sensors on the planet. Our bodies are the most amazing sensors because we've got billions of sensors going on constantly. And our back brain, our subconscious brain, is extremely sensitive to things that change and will alert us, not so much alert us, in a profound way. It'll alert us by like pinging our it'll make us scared. You might get that like weird feeling, or it might your hair back, the hair on the back of your neck might stick up or something like that. So it does alert us. So our bodies are amazing sensors. So most of the people that I find, like the Avi Loebs and those, and I think there's a Star Watch now that is actually looking up and trying to find these things, are all looking for to find that, the infamous UFO sighting. But we're saying that, okay, they're there. I understand they're there. Let the people react. Let's record the people, and then let's put all that together into some data. So we're actually going after the experiencers and trying to get them to be involved in this.
I like that. I like that a lot. How everyone's trying to look up and capture the UFO, like you say, but then you've turned it around completely on the individuals, which, I think they are the most important aspect of this subject, and have taken a back seat for a little while. So it's really good to see. So, but what a lot of what you mentioned there was, am I right in saying, was sort of phase one of MUPAS?
The phase one was that we were trying to understand why these people were getting hurt. And now phase two is we're trying to make a correlation between what's going on in the environment and trying to really understand what the source of this thing is. And we're not saying what the source is. And it's kind of weird. We're not even saying that the source is outside. We might be the things that are creating. We don't know what our brains are capable of. We might be creating all of this anomalous signals. We don't know, but it is happening. So it is happening enough that we can record it outside their body. It would be amazing if we could do that, right? We'd have like this, like if we had like this ability. But if you talk to any neurologist, they'll say you're crazy. So they say it's probably something to do with something outside coming in as opposed to you creating it. But we don't know that. We don't want to make that speculation. We want to say that we know that when something outside happens, when we record something outside, people start having experiences, which then leads down the road sometimes to an injury.
Yes, no, of course. So how is phase one different from? Sorry, how is phase two going to be different from phase one?
The number. So the phase one was all about 35 people over 3 years. Phase two now just started. I think we just kicked this off. Well, it's actually, you don't mind me telling the story, why. So after phase one, we did it for 3 years and we ran out of money. And we said to Hal, that's it, we're done. We have all this data. We wrote a paper, we gave it to him, we gave it to the sponsor and everything like that. And we said to all the people, can you send the device back? Or if you want, just keep it. He said, no, 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 wait a minute, wait a minute. You can't take my device away. What happened is that these people started to use this as a way to understand what was happening to them, made them feel much, much better. People get scared when they like walking into a dark room that you've never walked into. You just instantly get scared. I mean, that's just natural. But if you know a little bit beforehand, you have a piece of equipment that giving you, or not just a piece of equipment, but a whole system around you that's helping you like understand it. They felt better. um, so there's a bunch of people that came back to me and says you can't shut this down. But I did actually run out of funding, so I said if I ever kick this back up again, I will get back in touch with you. Um, and it turns out that now, I guess about a year after we shut it down, I was actually approached by one of the people, a family that was in the first study, that actually said, I'm going to fund you now to do the next group of studies. So I got funding from an individual. It's not just an individual, it's a family that they were. It was one parent and two children that were having profound experiences, and they had a device during the first study, and they actually were able to cope with this now and live with it and actually be part of their lives because of the system. And they felt that they wanted to now help other people do this. So they funded up to 500 devices initially, where they would pay for the actual cost to get them the device. But of course, the people has to participate. They have to do the narratives and everything like that. And after the first 500 go out, if everything's successful and we don't run into any issues, they're actually, because they asked me, says, how many do you really need to make a significant number? And I said, well, and I did all the calculations for them, and I said about 10,000. They said, okay, we might be able to go up to 10,000, but 500, and then we're going to ramp it up, ramp it up, ramp it up. So um, so this started probably, I think it was in March, we kicked this thing off. And since then, we've hit our, we're approaching 200. So we should be at 500 in the first 6 months. And then, we'll probably bring on more and more people. So we're trying to so what's different between the two now, we want to increase N and make it a community. And now we're not just in the United States. Now we're all over the world. So right now we have 200, a little bit more than 200, and we're in 9 different countries. In fact, there's a bunch. I think there's like two or three in England, I believe. Australia is a biggie. I don't know why, but Australia is a biggie. Scotland, Ireland, there's going to be they're a lot. They're out there in the world. So, and then Heselden. Heselden has a bunch of devices. The Heselden Valley.
Oh, Hestalen in Norway.
Yeah, Hestelen. Oh, I'm sorry, I pronounced it wrong. Hestelen. Yeah, I pronounced it wrong. Sorry. They have a bunch. Remschelen. Can you help me pronounce that? Remschelen.
Rendlesham.
Rendlesham. I'm sorry, I did that horribly. Rendlesham Forest is an area right now. They have a device. So yeah. So and are they close to you? Are they close by to you?
Everywhere's fairly close with England. It's so small. It's a good three hour drive from me, but
So they have a device. There's a bunch of researchers there that have some really strange phenomena going on. They contacted me, and so what we also do is that the people that are in the study, they have access to the public devices, so they can watch, comment on the public devices, and get their feedback. So it's almost like a social thing going on, and we've got Mount Wilson Ranch that's coming online. There's a bunch of ranches that are coming online. Um, Blind Frog might, because I'm on the Blind Frog. I don't know if you heard of that TV show, Blind Frog
I'm
Ranch.
very familiar with it. Yes.
Oh, so I'm on that show, and so they have some devices there. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to instrument the areas and the people to kind of get all this information and keep the people actively watching and what we want to hear their comments. We want to say, oh, people look at this, oh, look at that orb, or look at that strange signal, because I want to take their narratives of what impressions of what they see and use that to see if there's some correlations between what they're saying and what's going on in the property.
Sure, sure. Was phase one United States, or was it a smaller area within the states? 'Cause I know a lot of your work's been in the Uinta Basin in Utah.
Yeah, so it was mostly in Utah. So of the 35 people, probably 20 were in Utah. The rest were West Coast. So there was a bunch in the West Coast area, all the way up to Oregon. Some in the DC area, some on the East Coast, but mostly in there. And then it's not just straight 35 people. We had a bunch of people come in and out, depending on. So like some people wouldn't do anything, right? They would just put the thing in the house, and they would never give us their narratives, and we would explain you really need to do that. So we would swap it out, give it to somebody else. So we brought a lot of people in and out. Oh, there's another reason. So one of the interesting things on the second one, we kind of felt that we had the same demographics. The people had the same type of people. They were, either Native Americans, or they were professional, or they were all basically grouped in the same type of. But now we're saying we want everybody. We want all sorts of, every single person we can think of. We don't want to, you know, we don't want our data skewed by the people that we pick. We want to pick everybody. So that was another thing that we said we want to have, complete spread over all possible people.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that would give you more data points. Did you find any difference at all between, let's say, the people in on the West Coast compared to Utah? Was there any difference in the data?
Big time, yeah, big time. So the Native Americans are amazing. They are so receptive, and I've heard this in so many different ways that they had the most profound experiences. And believe it or not, the devices were just like going crazy when they had their. So that's why I say maybe they're the catalyst of this whole. Maybe they're amplifying it or echoing it or something. It just seems that when they have these experiences and they go into these trances, the device would go crazy, and they would report having all these things. So they were very profound people. And then it was interesting. So a lot of these people we would pick, and I would never think to ask their race or any of their backgrounds, but some people would have these amazing signals, and I said, by any chance, do you have any Native American in your bloodline? It's, oh yeah, my great grandfather was. I said, well, that makes sense. It just so strange.
It really is. I mean, what we hear a lot from Utah because of Skinwalker Ranch being the most sort of well-known and prominent location there. But obviously, you mentioned Blind Frog, and there's a whole host of others. But as a scientist, do you have a theory on what's going on there, or do you allow yourself to speculate outside of kind of the scientific realm?
Yeah, so we had actually it was very one of the things that we wanted to accomplish in the second phase is that we wanted a close grouping of devices, because what we found in the first phase, we had maybe 4 or 5 devices that were fairly close together. We saw a cascade of experiences go from one device to the next in that area. So this is it, if I only saw it once, if I only saw it twice, I would say that was just a sheer coincidence. But we saw it many times, where we would have something high, high up in the Uinta Valley near the mountains. It would start there, and then one person would report it, and then 3 or 4 miles, or say 10 kilometers away, another one would report it, and then another one reported down the line. So it almost looked like there was this flow of energy, and I don't want to speculate what it is, a flow of energy where people will report that, like, I had an experience. This person would have an experience maybe a few minutes later, but the devices were actually indicating that something was propagating down. Like, there's in physics, there's this thing called propagating waves. It's like, when you take a rope and you snap it and you see that wave go down. That's kind of what it looks like, where you have this wave traveling. Don't know what it is, but it looks like that particular area of the country has a lot of this waves going up and down, and it doesn't move very fast. It moves very, very slowly. Maybe maybe 30 kilometers per hour. Is that fast? What's like maybe 10 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour? What's that? I don't whatever that is, like whatever. Anyway, it's not like this super high speed of light thing. It's like it just propagates over the countryside, and it looks like in that area there's a lot of stuff. That's why, and it actually comes down through that whole Blind Frog Ranch, and then eventually ending up down near Skinwalker. So it looks like that whole area gets this flow. Now, it was only 4 devices that were in that area, so it is a little speculative, but it's a very good indicator that if we put more devices, more concentrated devices, then we might be able to really, really do that all over the world. So that's why we came up with the number of 10,000, because we wanted high concentrations. We wanted to be maybe within 2 kilometers of the next device all the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's just stick with the devices and talk about them. Could you describe, because these are fairly small units, aren't they?
So we've got two. So we've got this. Well, okay, this is phase two. Phase one was kind of engineering, rudimentary. It was we built this thing that we put into the ground, so it looked really engineering and very scientific. But this one, people were going to put in their houses, so we actually it's a little bit. I don't know if you can see it. So this is a little device like this. It's got a whole bunch of um, in, ports in the back where there's a USB port in the back. There's an I/O port. It's really what it's meant to do is just sit there all day long and just record all sorts of stuff, and then you could plug things in the back of it like um, gamma rays, or you could plug in like and all sorts of devices that we have to plug into the back. So that's one of them that people like put in their houses. And then I always wear my watch, so I can't really see it. So this is a biometric watch. It actually comes from actually we buy it from somebody in England, and then we put it in. So basically, it's the same thing. It hooks up to your phone, and it kind of does the same thing. It's not as great with like the gamma and stuff like that, but it records what you're feeling. It does your heart rate, it does your tremors, it does your movement, and it actually takes that. When you report something, what it's doing is actually correlating that with what you're actually feeling, your anxiety level. So that gives an indication. So when we use that with our models, we actually spin that data in at the same time. So people are actually like this better because they can walk around with it, but it doesn't have the fidelity of this device because it doesn't have all the nice little sensors that are in here.
So you mentioned there on that base unit, you can plug in extra bits of equipment. What are the base sensors in that core unit?
Here, let me actually show you mine. So this is the portal that everybody interacts with.
Okay.
So like for instance, and this is the real time portal. So this is actually data that's actually coming in right now. And I've got all sorts of crazy things going on. Um, so let me just show you. So this is our portal. So this is the live data. I can see my data live because it's, I'm administering this, but most people can't see this stuff live. So there's
Right.
cameras. So in the back of this thing, you can have an E&M spectrum analyzer. So you shove this thing in the back, and it actually gives you the energies for all the wavelengths from I think 700. I think it goes down to 400 megahertz up to 1.6 megahertz, something like that.
Right.
So that's one of the things you can plug in the back. You can plug in a camera. This is a really good infrared camera, so I have it pointed outside. So if anything anomalous flies by, usually at night, then
Sure.
I pick it up, and I've got AI that actually goes through and looks at that. So let me just give you an idea. Let me go back to this. So here's the historical view. So this is now over a long period of time. So this is for a day. So I have a Geiger counter that's attached to the back of it. So this shows what the radiation, the gamma radiation is. So
Okay.
you can do a Geiger counter, you can do an E&M spectrum analyzer, you can do a camera, and then if I want to, I can actually take a look at like for instance, the spectrum. I can go and I can look at over a time series and look at how my spectrum is changing as time goes by. This is all fairly normal stuff. I mean, what you do is you'll find an enormously large spike and say, maybe 1 gigahertz. There'll be enormous, like if a cop car goes by and is on the radio, you'll get a big spike or something like that. But this is what we're looking for in the data to see anomalies. And, of course, this might not be an anomaly, but for instance, if we look at the camera, if somebody has this pointed out and they see a lot of orbs, we can go into this thing and obviously this is not going to be anything, but we
Sure.
can do this. We can overlay what the system is thinking is anomalous, and it'll actually, we have systems out there right now that actually tracked an orb that goes by, and it'll actually show it as you go through your, because I'm going through the time portal right now. It's going,
Ah,
just
okay.
going, so I can just step through and you can actually see the orb going by and it's circling it as it goes by. And that's what it's using to actually tell people that things are, something's going on.
That's incredible.
And then, you can look at all of the mysterious way, like this is like just base background noise for the magnetic vector. But every once in a while we'll get a blip. That blip indicates there's something going on. If somebody at the same time, so actually we allow people to come in here and add incident reports. So they can come over here and they can actually type in, a whole, whatever they want to say. So
Right. Yeah.
they actually say, this is how they do their narratives, and then it
Fascinating.
gets recorded. And then at night, around 3 o'clock in the morning, East Coast time, all the data gets put into an AI engine, and then we actually start sending out alerts. So there's alerts that get sent out to the people that have signed up for them. I don't have any alerts, but if you signed up for alerts for your device and you want to know if something anomalous happens, then basically, I basically tell you what you want to see on the device, or what's going on with your device and your narratives and everything like that. So this is what phase two is all about. And like I said, we have like over 200 people now that have these devices, either a watch, or we call this the Mupas Mini, which is the smaller guy. We do have the bigger ones, the actual big ones, the ones that go on properties that has all the big cameras. We call that actually somebody called it something else one day, but we do it. That's a really big installation where we have to actually put, maybe we have to cement it into the ground and all this other stuff. We
Ah,
don't
okay.
have very many of those. We want to put, well, like Mount Wilson's going to have one. There's one in New Hampshire. There's just a couple. Those are the big installations where we know a lot of crazy stuff happens. But this is basically our look at the world.
It's
And then of
amazing.
course we have our, this is our biometric. So this is you can see that my heartbeat is, so this is my watch.
Okay.
I just turned it on, so it's not going to show you much. And then what else do I have? I have like infrasound, so I can look at the infrasound. Infrasound actually ends up being a really good channel. A lot of times when something highly energetic comes into, it really does affect the air molecules, and it'll actually create very, very low frequency, we call infrasound, like below 10 hertz
Okay.
type of noise, which we have a sensor in there that actually records that. So we've had some actually a lot of movement on the infrasound channel. And like you had pointed out, we always look to make sure that, like for instance, the gyroscope. There's nothing going on in my particular gyroscope, but there's people that actually have some crazy stuff going on.
Right.
Like we would look for like a blip in the gyroscope around the same, within a certain time frame of a blip in the infrasound, and also correlated with something that the people were reporting,
Yeah.
and that's actually when we classify that as a really good data point. We don't get many of those. Those are very, very rare, but those are like the prime data points that we're looking for.
Okay. Yeah. That's fascinating stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's actually going really well. It's amazing. This person was not in the first study. They would never even, been involved in this, but they were so enamored with this whole system that they felt really, really, it made them feel comfortable with it. Humans can live, I guess it's not just humans, but people can, or species can get used to a lot of things. So they get used to it and they start feeling that it's just part of their life. They just accept it.
Yeah. I'm curious, obviously with phase 1 and 35 people, you're probably able to, sort through and analyze the data quite well, but with these much larger data sets that you're gonna be dealing with in phase 2, how are you going to kind of do that sort of sorting through and analysis? Will there be machine learning or AI kind of to create the patterns and stuff?
So I said at 3 o'clock in the morning, what we do is we take all of the data and we run it through our AI model. So we have adopted something that, for instance, Facebook has these amazing AI models that allow you to extract a lot of the sentiment, a lot of the emotions from narratives, and also a lot of the descriptive words, like, what are they describing? Well, they're describing an event that is, an abduction event or a UFO event. So we pull out these features out of these narratives, and that's so we're using that. So we have these AI models that do that, and at the same time, we have AI models that look at the real time data, that, the squigglies that you saw, and could sense when there's something anomalous. I could look at this thing all day long and not realize there's something anomalous, or I could see something that looks anomalous, but the system says, I've seen that many times before, therefore it's not anomalous. So I have AI models that actually can go through the data. So it takes about an hour to do a day's worth of, we only have 200 plus people. When it gets bigger than that, it's going to take longer. But right now, it takes about an hour to crunch through all that data and come up with alerts and come up, not everybody sees all the alerts. I mean, there's a lot of alerts that never actually get out to people that are subtle things like, there looks to be an anomaly. We're going to have to check next time type of thing. So yeah, I do a lot of this type of thing. And then also, we've been working with this a company called Unhidden. I have to remember their
Very
name.
familiar with it, yeah.
Yeah, so we've been talking a lot. They've got some really, really good people on their staff where they've got psychologists, anthropologists, sociologists, and we're working now with them. Of course, I mean, I want everybody to realize that nobody sees the real raw data. And that all's been basically broken down into things that it's just ones and zeros, basically. But they're willing to get on board and help with the analyzing this and actually coming up with basically hypotheses and um, basically theorems on exactly what is making experiencers experience, and what does this all mean, and what does it mean to the community at large, and why are I mean if you I don't know if I heard a statistic that almost 70% of the population at one time have had experiences. Um, if that is the number, if that really is true, why is it so large? Why are we all experiencing something? So they're going to help with that. So they're on board.
Ah, it's really good to hear. John's a good friend.
Yeah, yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah, he's got some really good people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes me think, they're dealing with a lot of the kind of psychological aspects of how experiences feel about these sort of things. And, with you dealing with a lot of kind of data and scientific focus on that respect, what do you have anything in place for that kind of psychological safety of the experiencer if something were to occur, let's say, for example?
Well, so that I just like I mentioned the alerts. Sometimes we kind of say I'm very very cautious about sending alerts out that something happened, and I like to do it in the rears. So in other words, they're not going to get it for 3 or 4 days. So I don't want to spook anybody. I don't want to scare anybody. This is not meant. This is a scientific thing, but the people have the right. It's their data to know something. So we send it back in 3 days. They say, "Oh wow, yeah, you're right. I did report that. It was, and I did see this." So then I show them the data. So it's not alerts like, "Oh my God, run out of the house." It is a notification. Maybe I should rename that to notification. Actually, that's a good idea. That something that the system sends something anomalous, but it really is up to the guys like on Hidden to really understand what that really means and how it affects us and how it changes us. I'm a physicist, so that's kind of out of my strike zone a lot. So I rely on people like that to work with with me to help us.
Sure. No, it's great seeing these kind of collaborations because it all adds to what we're trying to figure out here. But dealing with a lot of these experiencers and experiences, I suppose you could say. So has your interaction with these experiences and experiencers, has it changed your view on the phenomenon itself?
Yeah, so back in 2017 or 2015 actually, when Hal put us on this track, I didn't really understand, I didn't know the word experiencer. I mean, that was not in my vocabulary, but I understood that people did see UFOs and there was something. So now I've gone from, okay, there's something out there and it could be in the environment, to now saying, I know there's something there and I appreciate and respect the people that are having these experiences. And I feel bad for some of them because it is a scary thing. I work a lot with the Reddit people on, so there's some really good Reddit subreddits. Like there's an Our Experiencer Reddit that I work with the actual moderators I work with, and they kind of fill me in and teach me what experiencers are, what's the makeup of them. What are they doing? Why are they doing it? And kind of teaching me on what it really means to be, because unfortunately I am not. So I kind of missed the boat, and it may be just because of my education. As an engineer, engineers are very pragmatic, and maybe that part of my brain just been pounded with, like, everything has to be real. It has to be, you have to be able to touch everything in order to be real. So that's very possible of why I'm not an experiencer, but there's a lot of people that are. And so I've been working a lot with the Reddit people and other social media, like Carl, big social media presence. These are the people, this is the vehicle that you can get a lot of information from and understand what these people are going through.
Sure. Yeah. Now, one thing that a lot of people in the UFO community, and I'd say the public who maybe touch upon this subject, is they like to see the latest UFO video and they want to see this clear kind of HD footage. Have you actually captured, or any of the experiences captured any pretty compelling footage throughout the phase one?
Yeah, phase two. We had a lot of people. So yeah, we do have a lot of people in correlated that have recorded things in, cameras pointing outside. So a lot of people have their cameras pointing outside, and they have their devices at the window to capture when they see something anomalous. I said we saw an orb go by, so we have all these things. So we're seeing things, but you have to realize that we don't see ships. We see energy. We see, so it's not like you see this definitive shape. You see something flying by that has, it's capturing it in the infrared, or it's capturing it in the natural light. So we don't have anything that looks like, a UFO. But we have an anomalous craft that is not something that's screaming by their house. That is not an airplane, not a drone, not a satellite, not a star. Obviously, because it doesn't act like it at all, and it actually leaves some kind of electromagnetic or some type of environmental change that we record on the devices. So we have lots of those right now.
Wonderful. One thing that this week we had the Skywatcher team state that they have
Oh, okay, yeah.
they've stated that they have some kind of technology that they call the dog whistle, which allows them to summon these objects almost 100% of the time using, I can only assume, some kind of frequency or something. Is that something, do you think that you'd be maybe interested in doing at some point in the future to see if you can, you know, make it happen, make it just, so you're able to record these things?
Yeah, I think that we have a couple people that do that right now. So we have people that will purposely sit down and go into a trance, and then of course they report that they went into a trance, and we're monitoring full time. We're monitoring all their signals around there, and they're actually reporting that they're seeing things, and but we're actually seeing. So we have people that can actually sit there, do their thing, and we get basically anomalous signals. And Carl is one of those people that can do that. He's on many times, or over a month, he will say, I sat down in my place where I do this, and I just sat there and I thinking, and all of a sudden he would look at the data, like, a day later, and all of a sudden it just went bonkers. So we do have people. So when the Skywatch people say they have people that do that, I say absolutely. I think that's a real thing.
Yeah, but they're also saying they've got these psionic assets, they call them, these individuals that sit down and summon them. But they have said they've got technology as well, some kind of system that they've built, and they've obviously kept it very close to their chest. So what I'm saying is, would you be, is that something you would be interested in developing yourself if you were to work out what kind of frequency may draw them in?
Yeah, so I mean, this device that was purchased, or I'm sorry, that's been built, was really meant to be a launching platform for any kind of ad hoc type of thing. So you plug data in, you plug something in the back of it, and it goes down the channel and it gets recorded and it ends up on your portal and it goes into the AI. And right now we have three different things you can plug in the back, but there's room for lots more. I mean, you could plug in all sorts of crazy things. We're going to put a random number generator in there, or a quantum random number generator. There's a whole bunch of little experiments that we want to do to plug in the back of this thing. So this is really a platform for doing experiments, and that's what it's great. You're going to have hundreds of these things out there. We might say to 100 people, would you mind taking it? We'll send you this thing for free. Plug it in the back, and it might be this thing that they're talking about. We don't know, but this is what it's designed to do.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely incredible. It's really exciting stuff. So, this is you're now onto phase two. In an ideal world, how do you see this developing, let's say over the next 5, the next 10 years, if things kind of went to plan and the funding was still there pushing? What would you like to achieve?
Well, the whole idea and the reason the sponsor got involved because they want to publish in a peer reviewed and have it accepted. That's the key. So you do that, you need incredible statistics. Your capturing methodology has to be perfect. I mean, so everything has to be perfect, and somebody has to repeat it someplace else, completely anonymous from you, in order to have it really accepted that okay, this is a real phenomenon. So I would say that it's going to take probably another 2 years to get maybe up to the thousands, many thousands. So we get significant statistics, and then we're going to have to we're going to have to ask somebody else to like, can you go independently do this yourself? So we can get two different people doing it. So maybe even a third person doing it. So that's what in 5 years I'd like to see that happen, and then we can have a theory on the table that is actually explains why experiencers are having so much profound changes in their lives.
Amazing. And where's the best place where people can kind of look it further into your work that we've talked about here today?
So if you go to the Experiencer Studies site, I have this education one where I put all these documents on, as far as the phase one study, what the results were, some of the profound things that happened there. And then we had the Blind Frog Ranch study. You can click into that and see some of the crazy stuff that went up in that area and all the extra stuff that we did. This is the New Hampshire property that we instrumented that found, just these amazing orbs, and we recorded everything. There's a whole bunch of other ones that papers that we put on here relating to the Havana syndrome and electromagnetic energies and all this other kind of stuff. So this is kind of a catch-all for if people are interested in reading about the subject, they can go here. But then there's another one that we have a site where you can actually get. So this is the second one. We
Right.
can read about the study. So this is the one that we said we were funded, and we have a lot of things going on, and this is how you get, if you are interested in reading about it and seeing how you can get involved in it. This is basically all the information you have, and then you can click into the devices and read it, and then there's like a whole bunch of description on what the devices do, all the sensors, all that kind of stuff. So we put as much. Oh, that's the watch, the bio watch,
Brilliant.
and it kind of tells you what it does, how it does. It gives you screenshots to show you what you would see on your portal and stuff like that. Um, so anyway, so it's just we put as much information. So we want people to kind of go and kind of peruse it and look at it, and if they want to get in, if they want to get involved, then basically I think there's a link here to get involved. So at the end, the sign up site. So there's a sign up site at the end.
Okay.
If you want to sign up, we would love to have you. Like I said, we've been funded up to 500. We're approaching that number pretty quickly, but as soon as we reach the 500, we're going to go back to this family, and they're going to say, we're collecting some amazing data, and they're going to no doubt say to move forward and keep going.
Well, what I'll do, Jim, I'll make sure that all the links that we've just mentioned are in the description of this video because I know people will definitely be interested in what you've got going on.
I just want to. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. I mean, so we have people all over the world. So don't think that you have to be in the Uinta Basin or the United States or anything. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
No, no problem at all. Jim, it's been an absolutely fascinating conversation. I'm a real big proponent of people that are actually doing the work to kind of move forward in this subject. So thank you for that.
Oh, and thanks for having me. Let me share this with everybody.
No problem. And to everyone watching, as always, I really appreciate your ongoing support.